There's been more new gun owners in the last couple of years than ever before. And almost all of those new gun owners went out and sought advice from friends and family and heard advice. And a lot of that advice was quite terrible. There's some guns that should not be in the hands of a first-time shooter for many reasons. Number one, it's too complicated for them to handle if they don't have the experience. Number two, there's features on it that might be dangerous if they're not experienced and know how to handle a firearm. And number three, it may be that they can't operate the firearm, or it's just too much for them to shoot. So there's definitely 5 guns that I believe are the worst guns for new gun owners. And honestly, a few of these guns were the most recommended guns for new gun owners. Which is why I kind of decided it would be important to make this list. So here's the 5 worst guns for first-time gun owners. Now, I'd like to throw in a disclaimer here as well that all of these guns, I like all of them. I'm a big fan of all of them, and I own all of them. I just think they're terrible for the first-time gun buyer. And you know, if you have a loved one come to you and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying my first gun, what do you recommend? Just because it's best for you or you like it, doesn't mean, just think about it for a second, like they've never had a gun before. And there's a lot of guns out there. They're great guns. I like every single gun on this list. I just would definitely not recommend them to new gun owners. Number 1, any Magnum Revolver. What I'm talking about is a .357 Magnum Revolver or a .44 Magnum Revolver. And there's a few reasons why. Number 1, if this is their first experience shooting a handgun, they're going to hate it. They are going to hate it. Now, if you buy a .357 Magnum Revolver and you shoot .38s out of it, that's a fantastic firearm for a first-time gun owner. So it's really about the caliber itself. Any Magnum rounds are just awful for that first-time gun owner because, again, they're going to shoot it once. They're going to hate it. They're not going to go out and practice. They're not going to carry it. They're going to be afraid to use it if they need to use it. It's just a really bad idea. But a revolver is a great idea. A revolver is one of the best guns for a first-time gun owner, just not in the Magnum rounds. Now, again, you could shoot a .38 out of a .357 Magnum. So it would be a good idea to buy a .357 Magnum Revolver. Just don't shoot .357 Magnum rounds out of it at first. Just get used to it. Then know you got both options. If you shoot the .357 and hate it, just know you can practice all day long with .38s. So really, any Magnum Revolver. I think if a person bought a .44 Magnum as a first-time gun, that's an awful, awful, terrible choice. And again, shooting .357 Magnum, I think, again, is a terrible choice for the first-time gun owner because primarily, I believe they're just going to hate shooting it. Number 2, 1911s. A 1911 is a different beast. It's very different than most other guns out there. It has different safety features than most other guns out there. It's just a different beast altogether. You know, I believe that a 1911 always makes a good defensive gun. It's awesome carry gun. I just don't think a 1911, it's just too complicated for a first-time gun owner. Great gun, but not as a first gun. Just a little bit too complicated because it's, you know, most guns out there, modern guns, take technologies from the 1911. So most guns are similar to a 1911 in the way they function. It's just between the grip safety, the manual safety, the featherlight nothingness trigger, and you're carrying it cocked and locked. There's just too many things on that for the first-time gun owner to fully be able to function it and do really be successful at it without putting themselves at risk. In my humble opinion, I think a 1911 is a terrible first gun for first-time gun owners. Number 3, a Glock. Glock's a terrible first gun for a first-time gun owner for a lot of reasons. Number 1, it's a striker-fired pistol without a manual safety. And a lot of people are clearly very, 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 very comfortable carrying Glocks. But chances are, if you're watching this video and you say, I don't have a problem carrying a Glock at all, you're an experienced gun owner. But you don't want to put that in the hands of somebody who's never handled a firearm, who doesn't understand trigger control, or doesn't understand how to holster or put something in their pocket without touching that trigger. Because you just got to touch it. There's not much to the Glock trigger. And they call it a double action, but that pin is in the pull back position. There's a little bit more pull as you pull the trigger, but it's in the pull back position. You're essentially carrying that cocked and locked without a manual safety. And to that degree, the SIG P320 for the exact same reasons. I'm putting them in the same category. I'm not counting them as two guns because it's a striker fire gun without a manual safety. Now, Taurus, for example, their striker fire guns are double action. The pin comes in the resting position, and as you pull the trigger, it pulls that pin all the way back. The Glock and the SIG, they're already back, or they're almost all the way back, and they call it a double action, but it's a single action. The Taurus is a true double action. But any striker fire gun without a manual safety, I think, is a terrible gun for the first time gun owners, simply because they don't understand and certainly have not experienced enough time behind that gun and enough time in safety classes, firearm classes, to handle that firearm. It's just too risky. If you YouTube accidental misfires, most of them are with Glocks. It's just how it is. I'm not saying that how I feel, but I am saying that the number one returned gun was Glock, because it was the number one recommended gun, and most people went out and bought a Glock, and then they realized, wait a second, I don't like this gun for certain safety features on it, and they returned it for something different. Number 4, a small pocket 380. Now what I'm talking about here is something like a PPK, a Ruger LCP, a Smith & Wesson M&P Bodyguard. Now here's why. These are great guns. I carry a Smith & Wesson M&P Bodyguard probably more than any gun in the world. I always have that gun on me, probably. Even if I have a bigger gun, I probably still have that gun on me somewhere. And I love it. But most new gun owners that I've spoken to, that their spouses or their loved ones or somebody went out and bought them a small 380, they hate it. They hate that gun. They say it's too poppy in my hand. It just kind of hurts my hand. I get it. If that was my first gun, I would hate that gun. There are so many guns that are just a pleasure to shoot. That is not one of them. It never has been and never will be. Even if you're used to shooting, it's still, you pick up a CZ75, now that's a pleasure to shoot. Tiny pocket 380s are not. They're just terrible first guns. And it kind of goes back to the Magnum thing. They're not going to like shooting it, so they're not going to practice. They're not going to carry. They're not going to use it. So what's the point? And finally, number 5, any gun in the world that you can't fully operate. I just have to say that, and I don't mean to kind of put at the end, not a gun, here's a big giant category. But if you can't fully operate that gun, I'm talking everything, chamber around, fill the magazine, take it apart, clean it. If you can't fully operate all of that stuff, it is the worst gun you could possibly buy, because why would you own a gun that you can't operate? If you can't rack the slide, and that's usually where people go wrong, is they buy a gun, somebody recommended this gun, so I went out and bought this gun. I can't operate it. I can't rack the slide. I can't put bullets in the magazine. Make sure you can fully operate that firearm before you say, okay, I'll take this one. When you go to that gun store and you buy a gun, go somewhere where they will allow you to fully operate it, and they show you how to fully operate it. And if you can't fully operate it, including, I'm not saying you just pick it up and take it apart, but at least have them show you how to do that, and have them walk you through it, and then see if you can do that. Other than that, it's the worst gun for you. So many people went out and bought guns that they can't even operate. Or spouses went out, or loved ones went out and bought guns for their loved ones, and they can't even operate them because they didn't have a chance to sit in the gun store and pick it out themselves. So there you go. There's my top 5 list of the worst guns for new gun owners. I also put a disclaimer here at the end that obviously I'm not saying these are the worst guns. These are great guns. I love all of these guns. except for the ones I can't operate. But rarely do I come across one I can't operate. But I love a 1911, love a Glock, love the small 380s, love Magnum revolvers. I just think they're terrible for first-time gun owners. Just really bad idea. It might be great for you. I just wouldn't recommend it to your loved ones when they say, I'm thinking about buying my first gun. What do you recommend? I think you should think, well, I like a Glock, but that's not necessarily the right gun for them. Or I love a Magnum revolver, but that's not necessarily for them. So I hope this video has been darn helpful. I think it's an important one to have made. And any thoughts or insight on any of that stuff, put that in the link below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. Feel called to support this channel with Patreon. That link is also below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests, so please don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.